who better than me?
Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share this video with a friend, a colleague, an ally, an associate, an enemy, family member, whoever, I appreciate all of them. Now, usually I would be doing a weekend wrap at this particular time. However, as I didn't actually get any episodes out this week, and a couple things have happened along with not being a huge amount of boxing action on, apart from obviously the very big card between Canelo Alvarez and Dimitri Bevel, I figured let me amalgamate everything and put it all in one. So, without further ado, start the show. So first things first, Kell announced his retirement from boxing at the age of 36. Honestly, I rate the move. It made a lot of sense, to be totally honest. He did what he wanted to do, which was fight his amateur nemesis, we could call him, in Amir Khan. The Conor Ben fight, I mean, it was a winnable fight, but was it really a fight he needed at this stage in his career? No. The Chris Eubank Jr. fight definitely wasn't a fight he needed. Now, realistically, I'd actually predict that he could and would beat Eubank on points. But if he lost, it's like you're giving this guy a name on his record that at this point in time he doesn't really deserve. If we're going to be like, totally 100 with it. There was the Liam Smith fight at 154, but again, it's like, is it really worth it? Like, at the end of the day, like, he did what he wanted to do, and he wanted to beat Amir Khan. That was the one thing that drove him in his whole career. He got to do that, and he got to end his career with that victory. Now, we look back at his career, there was a lot of missed potential. Like, I feel like he could have done a lot more in the division than what he actually did. Some of that is his fault, quite a bit of it, to be honest, but some of it is also politics and outside factors and whatever. But when you look at his career, I mean, look, he went in there with the consensus #1 and #2 welterweights in the world currently, with Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford. In the Errol Spence Jr. fight, he had the caveat of literally just going up to 160 pounds the fight before, getting his eye socket broken by Gennady Golovkin, which was obviously a very erroneous move, to be totally honest. But then came back down and was beating up on Spence quite conclusively. It was a very competitive fight, but like, he was winning that fight quite clearly up until Spence managed to break the other eye socket, which obviously happens when one gets broken, the other one becomes weaker over time, as they say. And history, what was it, the 11th round, he couldn't continue through the 12th. Potentially, I mean, look, if he had made it through that 11th and 12th, there was nothing to say that he couldn't have actually got a points decision, because I felt like he was quite clearly in control of the fight up until sort of like round 7, round 8. But it is what it is. Came back, had a couple other fights at 154, or sort of flirting between 147, 154. Came back, fought Crawford. It wasn't, he got stopped pretty conclusively. I think, what was it, the 4th round he got stopped, the 3rd or the 4th round. But he actually put in a better performance against Crawford than a lot of other opponents had for the few rounds that he did fight him. Like, he puffed up Crawford's eye, was touching the eye quite, sort of quite viciously for the first couple rounds. But apparently, making weight for that fight wasn't done correctly, didn't have the right team, with him. Not to say he ever would have won that fight, but he probably could have done a bit better than he actually did in terms of at least lasting rounds. But ultimately, look, he was a world champion. He beat a world champion, a credible world champion, to attain the title in the first place in Showtime Sean Porter. So he beat, realistically, what we might call at least 3 of the consensus top 5 welterweights of sort of the last, what, 6-7 years. Because who else would you put in there? Maybe Keith Thurman and Manny Pacquiao, or you Dennis Ugas maybe. But yeah, look, it was the right time. And the good thing about this, as I said, is at least now Chris Eubank Jr. has got to do something else rather than call out a 147 pounder to try and get a payday. Like, if you're claiming that you're all about titles, then go for a title. Golovkin probably isn't going to be fighting Canelo next, according to, you know, maybe the reports that we've seen, which obviously I'll touch on in a moment. So yeah, target Golovkin, go back, try and see if we can get Charlo after he fights Zulewski. Or just do something. Like, this ain't the time for you to be sitting around calling out these small guys for these big pay. If you really want a title, if you really want to cement a legacy, now you've literally got no excuse but to, you know, call out people in your own division. So we'll see what he does. But, you know, on the Kell Brook front, you know, had a good one and sail off into sunset, enjoy retirement. No coming back. Like, we don't want to see you again in 2 years. Oh, I've still got something left in me. Nope, you did what you needed to do. If the exhibitions happen and all that stuff, I mean, hey, cool. I don't really mind as long as it's, you know, an exhibition and that's it. But yeah, he had a pretty good career. He fought some of the best. Record is credible. So, like I said, enjoy retirement. Well done to the special one, Kell Brook. Now, let's talk about the action from last night. Now, I watched the entire card, but I didn't really focus on the card as a whole. So I'm going to just give some quick initial impressions. You got Zhilei Zhang. He got out Scott Alexander, first round KO. You know, obviously he was a replacement for Filip Hrgovic, who pulled out due to the passing of his father last month. I saw an interview from Zhilei Zhang where he basically said, look, condolences to him and his family. It must be a hard time, and, you know, left, right, and obviously our thoughts are with you. Get back, you know, into training safely so we can reschedule our match. But he was also saying, well, no, but like, your dad died, you know, a little while ago, towards the start of April. Like, why pull out the week of the fight? Like, you could have pulled out earlier and, you know, given us some more notice for another opponent. However, it didn't really matter because he dispatched of his opponent in the first round. And the big selling point of this last minute opponent was that he had never been down or knocked out previously in his, I think he had 17 fights. I think he was 12-4-1, something like that. I'd have to check the record. And yeah, that was the claim to fame, is that he had never been knocked out before. But I saw the size difference between the two of them at the weigh-in. Zhang was almost 280. He's like 6'7", and Alexander I think was like 6'3", 220 pounds or something like that. Yeah, I knew it was bound to happen within a round. I predicted within 3 rounds, but yeah, happened in the first. Shakram Giyasov. Now, that was actually a pretty good fight. He knocked down Gomez 3 times throughout the event, which was, you know, it was pretty conclusive. But he got himself rocked a couple times as well. So he's definitely got to tighten up on that. But his style is sort of very languished and a bit unorthodox in sort of the way he holds his arms. It's almost like he almost has this zombie type crouch when he's you know, sort of when he's boxing, which I'll break down a bit more on Tuesday with my co-host Tony for the breakdown on the Undefeated podcast. I'll go to the co-main real quick, which was Montana Love versus Valenzuela. Now, that was actually it was quite a sort of it started off really well in terms of how the aesthetic of the fight was. Montana Love managed to drop him in the first round with a check right hook, coming, you know, when the guy sort of stepping in trying to throw a shot. It wasn't a heavy knockdown, but you know, it was what it was. And then subsequently he then got knocked down the following round, which was the first time he's obviously been down in his career as well. And then it was pretty much like a fencing match pretty much for the rest of it. Now, I did score it sort of 7-5, so it was like a 114-112 as both of them, you know, got 10-8 rounds against each other. when Montana's been quite active, it's like 5 fights in 13 months, so he's been busy. Some people are saying that, you know, he looked rather sort of drawn or a bit tired at the weigh-in, so possibly he might need to take a bit of a break or assess how he's actually making his weight or what he's doing during training camps. Like, he's definitely got the potential to be a star. Whether his ceiling is high enough to be like a, you know, a reigning world champion or a unified champion or something like that, I'm not sure, but he's definitely got the character of a star, you know, sort of like a Adrian Broner in his prime with a lot less vulgarity, and, you know, but he, you know, you see him walking out the ring walk, he was having a whale of a time. Maybe he was a bit too more concentrated on his actual ring walk than he was on the fight at hand, but he did what he needed to do. He got the rounds in the bank as well, which is always a good thing. But as I said, maybe he needs to take a bit of a break just to recharge, or again just to assess the way that he makes weight, because that could definitely be a hindrance moving forward. I actually predicted for him to stop Venezuela. I thought it would be like a late one, and there were times in there where it felt like he maybe could have, but he wasn't really pressing the action too much. That being said, he's never gone 12 rounds before, so potentially he just wasn't sure if he, you know, really applied pressure, whether he'd be able to sort of survive it. Now he's gone the 12, I reckon that will probably benefit him a lot more for his next fight, because at least he knows that he's got the gas tank to kind of go the distance and push on a bit if need be. So it was a decent performance, but it wasn't anything great. But all the learning fights, they all benefit, and it's, you know, it was what it was, which was, it was adequate, let's put it that way. Now let's talk about the main event. So it was Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bevel, and to some, Bevel caused the upset. He got the decision on the cards, which is something most people thought would never happen to Canelo, especially in Vegas. But it's a shame I didn't actually get to do my basis picks. I had been thinking for the last month that Dimitri Bevel actually wins this fight. But I always, if you watch some of the other videos I said that I think Bevel will win this fight and possibly not get the decision, but not in the Gennady Golovkin sense, who, you know, it was a what you fancied. Like, I felt like he would actually get it. And just because there's so much more riding on the you know, on the Canelo hype train moving forward, especially with the zone and that Triple G trilogy fight, which they were after. They know that's a casual's dream for them and everything. However, when I heard earlier on in the week that there was the rematch clause, apparently it was a two-way rematch, surprisingly, but it wasn't based on, oh, if he loses, or just if he loses, like if it's commercially viable, like if the fight performs well commercially, there's a rematch clause in there. When I heard that, I actually thought, oh, so there could actually be a chance that Bevel gets a fair shake on these cards. And I've said in numerous videos, Bevel's style is the one style that gives Canelo the most problems. Like, at this point, he would have much rather fought Beterbiev or Joe Smith Jr. than Dimitri Bevel, because Bevel's like, he's just textbook. And it's not like he's textbook like he's predictable. No, like he's good at, he can change range, he can dip at the waist as well. It's not just about that stiff European style, especially he's with Eric Diaz. He's with him, so, you know, he knows how to change the levels, but he uses his feet well. His movement is excellent. He's got a good 1-2-1. He's got a good 2-1-2. Like, he literally does everything well. He's got enough power that you're not just going to sit there and try and walk him down and walk through his shots. I've said that he's got the pop. He's got a good chin. Yeah, he's been stunned before, but he's never been down. He's never been seriously hurt. He's always composed. He's always focused. He never panics, which is a good thing. He just does his work. And just looking at him throughout the whole build-up, you just knew that this guy was not worried about the stage that he was on. And you know, some fighters it gets to them beforehand, but he's not one of them, and that's one good thing about him. So I actually did predict that he would win. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying it was a 9-3 type fight, whereas the judges gave it 7-5, and all the judges, funnily enough, they had the exact same scorecards. So not even just the same score totals, but if you look at all three of the cards, like they all read exactly the same. I don't think I've ever seen that before, except for when someone wins a fight like 120, 108 or something like that. So that's interesting. I haven't studied the fight myself, if I'm gonna be real. I've had to watch it in parts because you know, tiredness and having to do some other things. So I'll probably go and do a score of it and maybe update that on the next episode, or do it on the breakdown on Tuesday. You know, so some people are like, oh, the scorecards are, you know, typical bad scorecards because he was 4 rounds down from the very start. Now, to be fair, a lot of people say, oh, you can't beat Canelo on points in Vegas or whatnot, but ever since he left, like, what was it, HBO or Showtime or whoever he was with before, like ever since he's been on the zone, his scorecards haven't been like that wide or that mad, if I'm being honest. So I think that whole narrative now has to kind of disappear, and even before this fight it had to disappear. Like he had pretty close scorecards with Danny Jacobs. Obviously, like the Callum Smith's cards weren't close, but you know, Callum Smith didn't really do much. Billy Joe Saunders got given more credit than I think he deserved, to be honest, and even Caleb Plant had pretty decent scorecards. And what was his name, Kovalev, like those scorecards were all in Kovalev's favor before he got stopped. It was just, you know, they all seem pretty competitive and pretty fair to a degree. So I definitely don't think he's been getting the rubber the green that way. The interesting thing will be now what happens next. Does he actually take the rematch? He says he wants it, but maybe in the cold light of day, if he watches it back and looks and says, yeah, maybe this one isn't the one for me, maybe go back down to 168 for the Golovkin trilogy and just accept maybe 175 isn't your division right now. I don't know. To be honest, I feel like 168 is probably the best place for him to be and stay, because you can bring up 160 pounders if you really want to. You can fight the current 168 guys, and there's not a huge amount of great ones there now, to be honest. You know, there's a couple decent ones that make good paydays, but overall it's yeah, it's a lot more comfortable. I feel like maybe the 175 journey, this might be the end of it, who knows. But you know what, regardless of what he does next, like no one can really chat shit. You know, like he's done a lot more in the last 2 years than a lot of these other fighters have done throughout their entire career. So, you know, one loss doesn't mean anything. He's only ever been beaten by proven elite level fighters, you know, Floyd Mayweather, arguably Gennady Golovkin for some people, and now Dimitri Bevel, who people can finally stop saying, oh, what is he really? Is he actually that good? Who's he really beaten? Well, now he beat the consensus #1 pound for pound fighter on the planet, regardless of whether he was coming up in weight or not. Remember, it was Canelo who chose him, not the other way around. Like Bevel didn't cherry pick Canelo. Canelo said, I want that belt. That's going to be my entry point into the division. So yeah, I mean, I'll give him the credit. He did what he needed to do, and congrats to Bevel. And if the rematch doesn't happen, then I'll definitely want to see what he does next, because he's one of my favorite fighters. But I'm going to be very interested to see what Beats has to say next, because he doesn't rate Bevel, or at least he didn't rate Bevel beforehand. So that'll be an interesting video to watch. I want to see what his take is. But look, let me leave it there. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope, you know, you agree with my views, or if you don't agree, put it in the chat and let me know what you think. But yeah, thanks for watching, and as always, Hardcore Casual out.